Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Journey Forward with Jory Rose. There's so much that I want to share with you all. So if you listened to my solo cast that came out 2 weeks ago, I talked about how motherhood is a mindfuck and just the craziness of life and the journey that we're on to ride the waves of emotions and transitions, and to do so in a way with authenticity and self-awareness and self-compassion. So I wanted to expand upon the motherhood is a mindfuck to just simply incorporate all aspects of our life. And life is a mindfuck. And I hope I'm not offending anyone with my language. And I just can't think of any better word to incorporate the capacity to which there's just so many waves to ride and so many emotions to navigate and so many transitions to allow ourselves to be in that balance of holding on and letting go. And just when we think we have it all kind of figured out, things change. And that is the way of life. It is the most constant thing of life is change. And we suffer when we resist that change. And we struggle when we get frustrated that the change is occurring, when we knew and we know change is going to happen. So in this episode, I'm going to share some things that have gone on in my own life, and we'll share it from a 30,000 foot view to maintain, my own privacy, but be able to share authentically what it was like to go through some of these transitions and how I have navigated and rode those waves of change and emotions and challenge and struggle, and the tools that I used to be able to do so with a little bit more grace, a lot less suffering than I otherwise might have in the past, and hopefully in a way that can feel inspiring and speak to you for whatever it is that's arising in your life. And I'm going to end this episode, make sure you stay tuned to the end around some ritual. Ritual is one of my most favorite things to practice as a root marker for holding on and letting go, for beginnings and endings, for setting intention. And I'll be sharing more about that. So why has my life been a mindfuck? Well, I had known going into this season of my life, it was going to look like no other season had yet before. And that's some of what I talked about in my last episode. That was my solo cast 2 weeks ago, of the transition of both my daughters leaving the house. And it wasn't supposed to happen at once. That's just the way it unfolded. And I knew this was going to be a huge challenge to my own identity, not just as a mom, but as an adult woman, how I live my day-to-day life, the ability for more freedoms it allows in other relationships as I'm more available time-wise, like logistically. But I had a deep knowing that this season, and for me, this season was really the next 4 months, like a September to December season of transition. I knew it in my bones. I felt it in my gut. And when transition occurred, that wasn't within my control necessarily. On the one hand, I was very caught up in my ego and in my mind around this sucks, I hate this, why is this happening? But really, for the first time ever, I had that chaos and that turbulence and tornado-like spiraling energy in my mind juxtaposed with a very deep calm and a deep knowing inside my gut that this is exactly where I was supposed to be. So I had been feeling for some time like I was becoming untethered. And I knew that untethering, it felt natural, and yet I resisted it. Part of it was related to my motherhood and an untethering of my kids' childhood and letting go of the past and embracing the present, whatever unknown that was to become, what I didn't know yet, but it definitely felt like an untethering. But also, there became some other untetherings that I think in my gut I sensed, but I didn't know how it would play out. And it had to do with some relationships, some from my past and some from my present. And about 2 weeks ago, I had probably the worst week of my life in recent memory. And it felt like my worst week because I didn't feel in control of what was happening. And that's really, really hard when it feels like life is happening to us. That change can be exhilarating when done by us, but it can be debilitating when done to us. And that's what I was in the midst of for a couple of days. And it felt blindsiding. It took me by surprise. And it brought up a lot of familiar narratives around anger, around fear, around anxiety, and trying to control situations that aren't within my control. And anger is an interesting one for me because anger is something that I don't think I've ever quite allowed myself to easily feel or let alone express. I am not a confrontational person. I don't raise my voice. I don't come out guns a-blazing accusatory or it's just not my way of being in the world. But tapping into anger is an unfamiliar emotion for me to give space for because I think I've been afraid of it. And in this untethering a few weeks ago, anger was really present. And for the first time that I can think of in a very long time, I allowed myself to get very present with what does anger feel like and what are the thoughts I have around this and what are appropriate ways to express it, but most importantly, to authentically express myself. And I spent a couple of days, not too long, probably about 3 or 4 days, really deep in the spiral, right? My own framework that I call the cycle of reactivity, where my thoughts are being activated, my sensations in my body are heightened, the emotions start to take over, and my patterns of reactivity include to externalize it, to do the very thing that I see most of my clients do and get stuck in, which is asking the question, why is this happening, from like a victim place? Like, why me? Why this? Why now? You can ask those very same questions with a different tone of voice, and they have a very different textural feel to them. But when you ask why me, why this, why now, from a stance of victimhood, it's easy to feel really disempowered. And it's easy to feel like others are controlling you. And I was in that space for a very short time, and it felt really shitty. One of the best things during those couple of days was that I recognized just how big my community of support is. I have never felt more connected to my friendships and to some of my family members that I have in the past month. Pretty much almost every single person I know who I have connection and relationship to has reached out to me to check in on me, even from just when my girls both left. So I gratefully felt very like there was a soft cushion for me to fall upon as I felt like things were crumbling around me. And at the same time that I felt I was being untethered and I felt that others were in control of who cut that string of the tether that had held me grounded and centered for so long, I had this deep knowing, kind of like this calmness in my core, in my gut, in my intuition, and even up into my heart center. That there was one perspective I could look at this, which was this is a breakdown. But my deep knowing was that this was actually a breakthrough. And Jerry Maguire is one of my favorite movies. And he says that line in the first opening couple of scenes, you know, is this a breakdown or a breakthrough? And while it felt like a breakdown, that was an old narrative for me to view what was arising. To see this as a breakthrough is the result of many, many, many years of practice of my mindfulness and meditation practice. And I continue to hold the space. This is a breakthrough, and I'm not sure how, and I'm not sure what, but it serves me to believe the thought that this is not a breakdown. And there was a handful of serendipitous events that occurred that week, one of which was I recorded a podcast episode with someone who I had rescheduled with 4 separate times for a variety of circumstances, one of which was when I had COVID, which you'll hear this episode in a couple of weeks. Her name is Deborah Fryer. But that was a serendipitous moment because I felt like she was talking directly to me in that moment. I needed to hear some of the things that she said. And our connection and our serendipitous alignment helped me align with that gut intuition. This, in fact, was not a breakdown. This, in fact, was a breakthrough. And what I realized in this untethering was that I was actually being given the gift of something I've been working on for close to 15 years, which is seeking independence. Coming from a family unit in which independence was not easily fostered, in which enmeshment and dependence was more of the norm, transferring my dependence onto my mom from a young kid, right from my mom onto my boyfriend, then turned husband when I was 13. I have been struggling since I had my quote awakening in my early 30s when I woke up one day and said, who am I? How did I get here? That I had not known what independence was. And in this untethering, what felt like life was happening to me, what I was able to reframe in a very aligned spiritual way was actually me being given the gift of independence. It didn't look the way I thought. It didn't occur the way I wanted. And yet, so often our spiritual gifts are not the way we thought it would look and not necessarily in the way that we wanted, but it's the spiritual mindset. It's the ability to detach from the ego to say, but that's how I want it to be, or I didn't want it to be that way. To sit with, well, what am I actually receiving? And if I take away the narrative of this sucks, or I don't like this, or even I'm angry, what am I left with? I'm left with, wow, I actually, in some kind of fucked up way, because it felt really tumultuous in the moment, I actually just received the very things I've been working on. And from that mindset, I got to stay really centered at a time that I otherwise felt untethered. I got to stay really grounded in my breath with my feet solid on the ground, firmly planted. I got to be grateful that I am so attuned with my own self and my thoughts and my manifestations and my visions and my needs that I was able to recognize pretty quickly. Yes, I had 3 to 4 days of really being in that shitstorm. But to me, that was, even in the midst of it, I still was aware of this deep knowing but I just wasn't clear on what it was. And that was revealed to me as the days went on. And let me tell you, to be able to go through hard times and not being stuck in ego is a gift, and it's a practice. And it's the result of what I've been practicing for over 10 years. And for that, I am beyond grateful. And it's why I'm so passionate about teaching mindfulness and meditation, because when I say it's not about the thing, it's how you relate to the thing, and it's how you relate to the thing that impacts your own suffering or not. Like, this is the absolute truth of our lives. It is our ego that says, but I don't like it. It's our ego that says, but this is hard. It's our ego that says, this timing doesn't feel good to me. It's our ego that puts the label of victim or externalizes the blame. Because when we are out of our ego mind and we are just in experience, it just is. And we're able to have equanimity around it. And equanimity is simply the practice of radical acceptance, to not keep fighting, but just to surrender and to allow what's here to be here, because whether you like it or not, it's what's here. And that is a spiritual practice. It's not always easy, because the ego wants to pull us back into the narrative, especially when we talk to other people. It's that ego that often keeps us connected of, oh, this is so hard, right? We join in with each other's suffering, or we continue a narrative of externalization of blame, or labeling other people's behaviors, or staying in judgment. Like, that's all ego work. And outside of that, you're able to sit with greater compassion and look past the ego that feels hurt and say, well, what's coming up for the other people here? Because underneath their actions, if I look at that through a lens of compassion, well, then my ego doesn't need to label or blame or judge. So as I went through this tumultuous couple of days with this deep knowing in my gut, this is going to serve me somehow. And to stay with that trust. That was at times a little bit difficult, because at the end of that same week, I was preparing for leading my women's retreat that just got completed a few days ago in Sedona, where I was leading a group of women on a journey. And I did not feel to be in the best place to be guiding others. And that was my ego saying, I should be more put together right now. I should be more prepared. I should be more professional. Like, that was all my ego talking. And then I sat with a little bit further, how can I get out of my ego mind right now and tune into that life? Life itself is the practice we're all here to learn. Navigating these ups and downs with greater ease, with greater compassion, with greater grace, with greater self-awareness, with greater gratitude, no matter what was going to occur on this retreat, was the absolute right thing that was going to happen, because life itself was giving me all of the material to teach, all of the material to be present with. There was nothing that had to be prepared. I mean, and I'm always well over prepared. I could have taught frameworks, I could have taught tools, I could have taught specific practices and guided very specific meditations, but I let go of the need to have to control any particular outcome. And I showed up as guiding this retreat from a place of full presence, knowing that life is the curriculum and I can be in it. I don't have to be above it. I don't have to be ahead of it, but to be in it allows me to authentically be this guide and walk alongside these other women. And it was such a gift to end my chaotic week in such a beautiful and magical, awe-inspiring place such as Sedona. And within hours of me arriving, I got a Thai massage. And the spa therapist was an absolute gift. And something that occurred felt powerful as she was trying to stretch my shoulder. She could tell that I was not releasing it, that I was not relaxing, that I was staying in tension. And the tension that I think she felt was the ego narrative stuck in my body of how much my week had just sucked. And what she said to me is she was trying to assist my body in relaxing. She said to me, take a deep breath. And I did. I took a deep breath. She said, give it to me. I got you. You get in the way. And her words just sunk in. Take a deep breath. Give it to me. I got you. You get in the way. And in that moment, I felt like that was a message directly from the universe talking to me. The universe saying to me, Jory, when it gets hard, take a deep breath. The universe telling me, you don't need to tighten your grip. You actually need to release and surrender. Give it to me. I can carry this for you. You don't have to carry this alone. For me, I use the language of universe. For some, it might be God. Whatever your spiritual higher sense of power of being is, use that word. But for me, it was the universe talking to me. Give it to me. You don't have to carry this alone. Release your grip on this tension that is all ego driven. Just release it. Give it to me. I got you. I can hold this. And then the reminder of you get in the way. And she was absolutely right. I'm the one getting in the way. My ego of this isn't how it was supposed to look. This wasn't the right timing. That was me getting in the way of recognizing, wait a second. I have a choice in how I respond to all this. I have a choice in how I relate to this. I have a choice in how I make meaning of what's arising right now. I have a choice. And that choice is much easier for me to enact when I breathe and when I loosen the grip and I get out of ego and out of that spiraling mind. And I allow myself to tune into my breath. And when I can do so, everything settles. It's like watching a snow globe, right? My ego is the one shaking the snow globe, saying, why is it so chaotic right now? But when I can be mindful, it is literally observing the snow globe, recognizing, take my hand off of it. I don't need to touch it. Allow the dust to settle. Allow the fairy dust, the pixie dust to settle. Because when it settles and you tune into your breath and into your body and begin to trust in that intuition, that's where the magic occurs. And so what came to me out of this whole experience was, how would you relate differently to whatever challenge you were going through? How would you relate differently if you knew it was in service of your highest self? And I asked this question to myself many times during that week. And I even got a text from a client during the retreat who wasn't there with me, who was going through something. And my response was, how would you relate differently if you knew that this was in service to your highest self? That every breakdown is an opportunity for a breakthrough. Every experience of feeling like someone is cutting the strings of being untethered is an opportunity for you to feel empowered of, wait, maybe I can cut that tether and I can come from a place of, how is this going to serve me? How can I take my power back? All of this is a choice. All of it is a practice. It's not easy. I never said it was easy. And it's possible. And there's more I'm going to share on this, and there's more I'd like to share from the retreat experience. But for now, I'd like to end with some ritual. So the day that this episode is coming out is the Jewish holiday Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year. And at the time of the Jewish New Year, it's an opportunity to reflect, to release what you no longer want to carry into the new year, and to set intentions for what you do want to bring in. And there is a ritual in Hebrew is called tashlit. And you do so at a body of water in which you cast away into the water what you no longer want to carry. So I invite you, for whatever it is that you're going through right now, to create ritual as an opportunity to let go, to cast away, whether that be an egoic thought, a narrative that's not serving you, a belief system that's keeping you in victimhood, a tightness or a grip on the things that you ultimately can't control, but you think you can. Maybe it's a shift of how you show up in relationships. Maybe it's letting go of some toxicity in your life that's preventing you from being your true self. And go to a body of water, pick up a stick, a rock, a leaf, a twig, and name what it is you want to release and toss it into the water and let the universe carry it. Take a deep breath. Give it to me. I got you. You no longer have to get in the way. Life is a mindfuck. Things are hard. Relationships are hard. The most constant thing is change. And how you relate to it will be the very thing to either help you get through it or to keep you stuck in it. That choice is 100% yours. And even though I am only a few weeks out of that shitstorm, I am in the midst of the rainbows. Not a spiritual bypassing of just knowing the rainbow would one day be there, but actually having gone through the storm, felt the emotions, recognized where I was getting stuck, saw the narratives, saw the opportunity, and breathed into where does my choice reside. And my choice resided in the belief that all of this challenge was in service of my highest self, that patterns I've been working on breaking got broken. And I now was free to create new, more aligned patterns for who I am right here and right now. So I invite you to do the same. Take a deep breath. Give it to me. I got you. You no longer have to get in the way. That is a choice. Anytime that you feel life is a mindfuck. Thanks so much for tuning in today, you guys. I really appreciate you being part of the community. If this episode spoke to you, it would really mean a lot for a rating, a review, to share it with someone who needs to hear it. And there'll be more. There's a lot more to share. Thanks so much for tuning in. Take care and be well.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat, visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.